Brain Hub, where curiosity meets opportunity and neuroscience. Come listen today.
Hi everybody, my name is Karina.
I'm Carolina.
I'm Milland.
I'm Madison.
And you are at the Brain Hub podcast, where clinical psychology students and neurobiology students will sit down and talk more about neurobiology of sleep and why is it important to sleep, why no one on earth can resist sleeping.
All right. So first off, sleep is a natural part of our day, right? So we all need sleep. We all go to bed every night. And what's interesting is that it doesn't happen automatically, right? So you sleep there, you lie there, and for I don't know, it depends on the person, but 20 minutes, you're like, man, I really want to sleep. But sometimes it doesn't happen until later because of stages of sleep. So we have different stages like slow wave sleep and REM sleep, and that's why we don't automatically fall into deep sleep right away.
Exactly. That was actually something that surprised me when I first learned that if you're in bed for 8 hours, that doesn't mean you're asleep for 8 hours. You might be asleep for 6 hours and 30 minutes, not the full 8 hours. I actually have this watch, it's called the Whoop. It tracks light sleep, REM sleep, deep sleep. So when I first saw the breakdown of most of my sleep was light sleep, I wasn't actually fully asleep 8 hours, 9 hours. That was something that surprised me a lot at first.
Yeah, I think something too is that I realized that awakeness is part of your sleep cycle. So you have parts in your sleep where you're technically supposed to be awake. So it's kind of counterintuitive where we're asleep, but not really, you know?
Exactly. I want to add onto your point, Lena and Milland, that I guess you're talking about beta rhythms, beta waves. Those waves are so controversial because basically your neuron activity is more active. So your neurons are firing more and you're not asleep, but consciousness is not there. So this is where our dreams happen most of the time. Not nightmares. Usually those dreams are so explicit and narrative based so you can remember them in the morning, right? So it's something that fascinates me, how you can't actually understand the brain to the extent where you can say, okay, this is black and white. This is where you sleep, and this is where you don't sleep, where you're awake. Your brain actually makes this magic, this little magic where you are kind of somewhere in between here and there, I would say.
Oh, it's kind of like when they say paradoxical sleep. So REM sleep is you have all those waves, all of those messages, right, going on in your neurons. They're firing.
Exactly.
Almost like you're awake, but you're not.
Exactly. Could anyone say what REM sleep is? Can someone clarify for our listeners what REM sleep is?
I mean, yeah. So for REM sleep, I guess the difference there would be it's usually, it's called REM, rapid eye movement. And so usually that's where your dreaming takes place and muscle paralysis. And so kind of I guess less stages technically than non-REM sleep, but it's usually the most referenced by people in terms of how you slept. I think too, sort of building off what we were saying earlier, it's interesting to track sleep too and what stages you're in and for how long. Because I think you wake up the next day and if you have somewhere to look and say oh, I got so many hours of REM or so many hours of this, it kind of makes sense in a way. Personally, in my experience, having tracked it, I'll look and I had some weird dreams last night, or I slept really weird, and then I look at my sleep statistics and I'm oh yeah, that checks out. It makes sense.
That makes sense for sure.
Yeah.
I just wanted to add about the weird dreams. I bet everybody has these dreams when you go and you're by the beach and then there's large fish in the sky flying, or I don't know, something weird tsunami falling on you, or I don't know. I think that's important to mention that there's an explanation to this. It's basically a few explanations. Scientists are still working on figuring out how we actually have those dreams and what's the reason behind them, but most probably it's just because of the memory consolidation process. Our brain is working on freeing like making free space for our future days and future memories, right? Not overwhelming and overloading our brain.
Mm-hmm. And I want to add on to something Madison mentioned earlier. As someone who also tracks their sleep, I noticed that when I'm very like sleep deprived, I actually see like my REM sleep is higher the next day. And I think that's because your body is trying really hard to recover because you're so fatigued. Mm-hmm. But even though like REM sleep is like the most, like one of the most important in terms of recovery processes, it's very interesting to see that like on some of your worst days, you have like lots of REM sleep the next day.
Yeah, I remember talking about that in class where it's like college students who, pull all-nighters, midterm season. Like, I know we're all not getting enough sleep, y'all. I know that for a fact. But it's like they go immediately into REM sleep. Like they like drop down. Just dead.
Just drowned in the sleep.
Yeah, like no chance of waking them up.
That's interesting. I remember Maddie mentioned briefly about like sleep paralysis. And it's interesting that some people are not able to have this sleep paralysis, and they're usually characterized by sleepwalking. But sleepwalking, I would say, how we learned at Psych 2 is more characterized to the non-REM sleep. Whenever you have like this nightmares, sensational dreams, I would say, right? You don't have like narrative-based dreams. In REM sleep, whenever you don't have sleep paralysis, it's interesting that you are not actually like sleepwalking, but you're acting weird. So people without sleep paralysis, they might act, their bodies might act exactly how they experience the dream that they are experiencing right now. That makes sense. So, for example, if the person dreams about, I don't know, like running, or maybe not running, but like talking to someone. These people usually talk in sleep and might, I don't know, like produce different sounds.
Oh, so it's like sleepwalking, but like crazier, like so much worse. So you're like beyond just sleepwalking.
Kind of. Yeah, I would say that it's not just, you're just walking and that's it. Obviously, you can injure yourself in both ways, but you're more like unconsciously acting in your own dream.
Like sleep living.
Sleep living. Exactly.
Yeah, I actually have a family member who's had those, and it can get like crazy to the point where I think they had just like dreams that like, oh, they were getting ready for work, fully asleep, but like their like partner would wake up and just see like getting ready for work, but like actually asleep.
Oh god.
Or then it would be like obviously the more extreme ones, like, oh, I'm in the middle of some battle with some other like supernatural creature, and I'm picking up the broom to like fight off this like crazy stuff, and like you just can't even wake them up sometimes. It's just kind of waited out, but
it's interesting that I guess I was reading about like how to deal with people or like how other people deal with those in their families who have who don't have sleep paralysis or who have sleep disorders, and they usually say don't wake them up.
Yeah.
Which is interesting. How do you guys feel about that? Like, why shouldn't we wake those who are like experiencing these episodes up?
Well, I feel like maybe it'll stop going on over time. I don't know if it's one of those things, or maybe if you wake them up, they'll become more aggressive. It could lead to like some negative side effects, scaring them. Mm-hmm. I'm not entirely sure, but it definitely depends on the person, right? Because if you're doing something dangerous, then maybe you should wake them up, right? If they're like fighting dragons with brooms, then maybe we should, hey, just letting you know.
I feel like too, there's like also that debate of like, even in the sense of what sort of stage of sleep is it best to like wake up in. I've heard things about that too. Like sometimes if you sleep longer, you're not necessarily like, or you don't feel like more well rested than if you sleep like 3 hours, just because of the stage that you like woke up in. So I wonder if there's like some credence to that and that kind of thing too. Like maybe by them having such like active dreams like that, maybe waking them up during that stage can have like its own effects, if that makes sense.
Interesting.
Yeah. That would be like my line of thinking. Do I know? No.
No, I have no idea.
That's like what would pop into my head, I think.
Yeah.
Interesting.
I think it's very dependent on someone's circadian rhythm. I feel like I actually read that it's more important to sleep and wake up at consistent times rather than... So, for example, it's better to... If you sleep and wake up at the same time every day and you only sleep 6 hours, that's better than sleeping 8 hours and the times fluctuate. So, depending on like someone's circadian rhythm, it might vary like when it's better to wake up, when it's better to sleep.
Yeah. Do you think that it might be connected to the like cortisol levels that are rising at the morning in the morning that actually like makes you wake up and like do something, right? Cortisol. Yeah. I feel that there are a lot of like stereotypic thinking about cortisol, like, oh, it's just bad stress hormone, but it's actually something that wakes you up in the morning, and something that if you don't have this regular sleep schedule, right, or like healthy sleep schedule, it might play a bad role, right? Because if you have a consistent sleep schedule, you wake up relatively at the same time, you go to bed relatively at the same time, your body temperature, your body knows where to rise your temperature, when to lower your temperature, right? So in the morning we have rise of our body temperature, rise of our cortisol levels, and this is why we have more awareness in the morning. And I feel that it's also important to mention this the sun exposure, or like the light exposure in the morning. Huberman.
Yeah.
We are actively listening to Dr. Huberman's advices regarding light exposure. So can you guys talk a bit more about light exposure, maybe in your personal experiences, if you have?
Well, I definitely also big fan of Dr. Huberman. I was watching the podcast, and I think it's really interesting that your hormones, you have like zeitgebers, right? So like external cues that help you wake up. So your hypothalamus kind of is in charge of those hormones that give you more cortisol, make you more awake. And when you're exposed to more light in the morning, that helps you, that tells your brain, that tells your hypothalamus, hey, we need to get up, we need to get moving, it's the start of our day. And it's the same thing with at night, where you need dim lights, right? Because your per and TIM levels in the suprachiasmatic nucleus increase at night to make you sleepy. And that is impacted by the amount of light you have and other cues too. So I know that exercise is a huge helpful external cue when it comes to making yourself more awake and active in the morning. So doing exercise first thing in the morning actually helps you get ready for the day. So you're like, yeah, I got this, you know?
Yeah. Do you exercise in the morning?
That's the only time I exercise in the morning.
I honestly have kind of problems with that because I'm not sure. Probably it's because of my unhealthy sleep schedule. I will be honest. I don't have like a perfect sleep hygiene or like sleep schedule because again, we're students and we have like, I would say, chaotic midterm schedule.
Oh, for sure.
Because it's like
8 p.m. midterms.
Yeah, after third week, it's like every week is a midterm week, and so you gotta like study and like balance and you also
system.
Exactly, and you want to sleep and like a bit later at the night you don't want to sleep because you're already got used to studying hard and like working hard at night. And so what I was trying to say is that I feel that exercise helps me a lot, but like getting myself to the gym, I haven't figured that out. So I know Maddie's like a hard runner, and she had discipline.
Well, so I was kind of gonna say too, like for my personal experience, right now I think definitely I'm going through like trying to regulate my sleep a little bit better, because it's like, okay, we're hard into midterm season, but I'm training for the half marathon, so I'm like relatively higher mileage. So it's like much more of a scheduled day, but at the same time, it's like with all of those things and like studying in my free time, I have to make sure that like the time I am awake is productive time. And so I think for me, a lot of it is like, okay, I need to make sure that like my sleep schedule is really good, because that's the time that I'm not like doing anything in terms of like studying, running. And so I think, I guess on the topic of like light exposure too, I think the interesting conversation is like those small things that you can do. So like a lot of times, say I have like an 8 a.m. I'll wake up in the morning and like the part of my morning that's like just in my dorm and not going to like class or anything, I try and do it in like my common area or like somewhere with an open window. Usually that's my common area because my roommates are still asleep. But like just purposeful small things can really help with like, okay, now I'm awake. Now my brain's awake. Now I can do the things that I need to do. But then also on the flip side too, it's like, okay, when I get back to my dorm at night, those purposeful things of like, okay, I'm going to stay away from my phone like at least a half hour before I go to sleep. Because the blue light exposure is a whole other thing. And that can trigger different things depending on like whether you're on social media or different things like that. And so I think the purposeful like morning and night things are really important. But then also in the topic of like exercise, I think for me it's like either extreme. Like I'll either like to go in the morning or it's sometimes nice to go at night because I feel like if I'm just having like a whole bunch of like stress and just constant dopamine the whole day and just constantly doing things, if I exercise closer, or not too close, but like kind of closer to when I'm going to sleep, I'm more tired and like I just kind of come down from that, and so it's easier to sleep. I think it does depend on the person.
Yeah.
For sure. I think maybe tied into that is just what fits with your sleep schedule.
Yeah, I think
like
it's
what you
like
do.
I think it's good that you're, aware of that and you're trying to make those steps, because something that I learned in Dr. Boyle's class in cognitive neuroeconomics is that there are some people who don't prioritize sleep, right? So, I mean, I remember reading about the 9 to 5, or it was 6 to 9, I think, work day in China or in some country.
Really?
Yeah.
Like 6 to 9.
In cognitive neuroeconomics. Yeah. So 6 a.m.
And it like shifts sleep schedules.
It shifts the sleep schedule. And you know what? A lot of people, they prioritize other things, which makes sense, right? Because you're working the whole day, you have no time to hang out with friends, to go out. So you're just left with like that sleep time. That's the time you have to socialize. So I love that you're, hopefully we can all just be more aware of these little things that help us sleep, because it's super important. It's super important.
It is. It is. I just wanted to add to your point, guys, that I feel, exercise is great. Going to gym in the morning is amazing. Running like super long marathons is like even better. But in terms of like actual practical tips, I guess, from students to students, I know we have a lot of listeners who are also students. I feel that something that helps me a lot is just to wake up earlier and to wake up at the same time, again, as Millet mentioned. And I feel that this schedule and that just a small, tiny little bit of sun exposure, of light exposure into your eyes, just looking into the window, looking into the sky, right, helps you prevent this, seasonal depression or like seasonal depressive disorder, right? Affective disorder, sorry, and helps you to fight this feeling of, I guess, just like depression during midterm season, during all of this chaotic, stressful events. So just maybe start getting up a bit earlier so you are not late to your classes, you're not late anywhere, and just get a tiny bit of sun, of light exposure every day. That's it.
Yeah, you don't gotta go to the gym or run 13 miles.
Just
when I'm saying like gym, I mean like a 10-minute ab workout with like the little Chloe Ting. You do the Russian. You do a little okay. Then I'm done.
Yeah. Just starting with the little things, like Karina and Carolina said. Like even like we're very privileged to live in California, where it's sunny most of the year. Like a lot of people on the East Coast, I know they don't get to see the sun every day. But still, just like going outside, even if it's not sunny, it's better than just staying inside for your sleep, for your health. Just doing these little things, like even if you can't exercise like half a marathon, lift a few hours a day, like just be consistent. Like schedule like a few minutes a day, like 4 or 5 times a week. Just do as little as possible, as consistently as you can. And that's better than doing nothing. And you will find drastic improvements long term.
Sure. I want to briefly mention the 2-day rule that I'm constantly using is so the 2-day rule is like don't skip 2 days in a row, because the moment you will skip 2 days in a row, it's a done deal. You will not go again to the gym. You will not like run again. You will not exercise again. You won't get up earlier because it's kind of controversial, and it's interesting at the same time, because how interesting it is that you just have to skip 2 days in a row, like 2 gym exercises in a row, and that's it. So try to make, if you're struggling with like consistency, and we absolutely get it. I feel that everybody
for sure
struggles here with consistency from time to time. Just, you can skip 1 day, but then show up another day, and then you can skip another day, but just don't skip 2 days in a row. That's I guess my biggest tip and my biggest like experience.
Yeah, I saw this quote that kind of goes along with that the other day. It was something about I'm not going to skip the gym today because I'm more likely to skip it tomorrow. So if you schedule like certain gym days and you don't go, like you kind of get a sense of disappointment in yourself, and it like depletes your self-confidence, and when you keep disappointing yourself, you're less likely to do things, and it just keeps becoming this constant cycle. So if you don't go to the gym like 1 day, it turns into months, weeks, years. So you just want to get yourself to actually do it when you don't feel like it, and that's really going to help you long term.
Exactly. And then whenever like you start skipping like days, weeks, months, and then whenever like you chat with your friends and your friends are like, yeah, let's go to the gym, yada yada yada, and you're like, I'm not good at it, right?
Oh yeah.
I don't really like it. I never felt like I'm good at it. So this is just to add onto your point that you feel more likely that you're not worth it, you're not good at it, the more you like lose, the more you show yourself that you're kind of like a loser in it, which you're not. It's just a matter of consistency and like hacking your brain, I guess.
Yeah, I think kind of drawing that to like the sleep regulation conversation too, it's like showing up for you can look so different than it does for somebody else. And like in the grand scheme of things, that's a good thing. Like it doesn't matter that it's not the same. I think the same thing with like even how we were talking about light exposure. I know some people who like struggle with sleeping will take like melatonin or something. And I think what's interesting too is sort of in the like hack your brain conversation, that melatonin is actually, or at least not necessarily fully induced, because levels do rise in like the evening, but it can be like, I guess, improved by like darkness. So I think small steps, even like, you know what, I want to go to bed pretty soon, so I'm going to turn down the lights a little bit, or I'm going to go somewhere a little bit darker, even if like you still have to be up studying or you need to do something else. Just like the small steps, showing up for yourself in those ways can have like the hugest difference, even in you just like biologically hacking yourself. Just to say like, I'm really stressed out today, I just feel like it's going to take me a little bit longer to like settle down and sleep. Let me just be in the dark for a little bit, or get off my phone for a little bit less light exposure, a little bit less, dopamine. Maybe, you know what, I was gonna go and do something or hang out with someone, but you know what, just this day, I just feel like sleeping is gonna be a bit harder. And so like kind of the active steps of like, or even, you know what, I'm not gonna go to the gym today because it took too long, it's too late, and I just won't sleep well. Because I know for me sometimes it's like, if I go and like have like a hard workout or something, and then I get back, there's at least like a half-hour period after where I'm like riding a high. I can do anything right now. But then it's like, if you go a little too close for like to when you're going to bed, maybe that's not the best thing. So
yeah, you mentioned something that I thought of as melatonin. So me personally, I stopped taking it, but for a while I was taking melatonin every night. So my roommate, I love her, love you, Claire, but we have totally different sleep schedules. So I go to bed super early, like 10 or even like 9:30.
Super early. Is it super early?
Apparently, according to most college students, which is fine. I get it. We have to study, we have to do all-nighters to get our midterms done. But she goes to bed like at 4 which is kind of when I wake up.
What?
So we have like flipped sleep schedules, which is totally fine because some people are more productive at night, right? So some people prefer to be up at night, and that's totally cool. But the thing is, I was having trouble sleeping. So I started taking melatonin.
And let me guess, melatonin dependent insomnia?
Yes. Melatonin works well, like every once in a while, you know, like I need to get some sleep. But then when you're taking it every day, right, over and over again, it stops working. So you're like, oh crap, I need more. I need the extra strength melatonin. And then you're like, 2 weeks later, oh crap, I need more. I need the extra strength melatonin. And it's like this endless cycle where I think, you know, what Madison was talking about, just turning down the lights, you know? Or like now what I do is my mom sent me these like chakra YouTube videos. So I'll like put my headphones on and I'll just play like this like music and it works so well.
About that, I just wanted to briefly mention Manjit app that is better than just chakra music. It's a personalized self-hypnosis app. And it's amazing because I use it all the time. Manjit has amazing voice, and it just kind of like a combination of meditation, sleep meditation, self-hypnosis, and then breath work. So it's kind of, you are naturally, I just want to emphasize it, no supplemental support, no like drugs and stuff like that, just darkness and Manjit voice that helps your nervous system calm down. And I feel that breath work is something relatively new to the field, and it's kind of like
Psy, Andrew Huberman,
trending right now. But I feel that it's working. I feel that if you tune in and you listen to Manjit voice and you
try that out.
you have to do it. I feel that every student has to do it, just at least to try and see if that works for them. But I feel that it's something that just makes you proactively prepare to your sleep. So Manjit.
Are you guys familiar with like non-sleep deep rest?
NSDR?
Yeah.
It's something that Huberman also talks about. It's kind of similar to meditation, I feel, because you are not asleep, but you're in a kind of like special place. I don't know how to explain it, but you can talk more about that if you
I feel like these practices are meant to enhance recovery in other ways beyond just like sleeping at nighttime. It includes like meditation, yoga, sort of like a combination of different things. It sort of, in case you have like lots of sleep debt, it's a good way to like do something throughout the day that'll help set you up for the next day.
Wait, could you repeat what it is? Because I was hearing ASMR, and I know we're not talking about ASMR right now.
NSDR, so
NSDR.
non-sleep deep rest. So Huberman actually has like YouTube videos on how to properly do it. There's a specific thing he does. It's called yoga nidra. It's like a combination of like yoga and meditation.
And breath work, I guess?
And breath work.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, so just doing these little things throughout the day on days where you can't get as much sleep or doing it consistently can actively enhance your recovery day to day.
I like that. I think honestly all of these tips are better than melatonin. And I know it's easy. I know it's nice. I know those gummies taste really good too. Like they make the gummies really yummy. So it's kind of hard, but over time I'm urging you, try something else because it's going to stop working and then you're going to be left just in bed.
Exactly.
Wide awake.
Go ahead.
Like on the topic of melatonin and like supplements, what is everyone's experience with caffeine and sleep?
Oh god.
Oh, it's a whole another topic, like about caffeine and addiction.
My sister and I, we always like to like joke that maybe she has more caffeine receptors than the ordinary person because like we're kind of opposite, I guess, in a way, because I know for her it's like if she has the smallest bit of caffeine, like she has to like regulate it. Even like one like source of caffeine per day can be too much just because like anxiety and like overstimulation. Whereas for me, I feel like I can kind of like draw the line maybe a little too high.
I know.
And I'm like, oh, like,
Celsius,
I'll be
right?
fine. Or then with running too, right? Because it's like,
yeah.
sometimes I don't want to go. So I'm like, oh, I'll just have like some pre-workout or like something to motivate me to go run. And then I even finish my run and I'm like so like anxious and just kind of like maybe too stimulated, I guess.
Interesting.
Yeah. So I think it depends on the person for sure.
Yeah, one of my friends actually on that, she had like a little bit of green tea matcha. And I remember she was like, it was too much. Like she had to drink a lot of water. She was shaking. It was so much. And then for me, what I'm struggling with is like, I used to struggle with like Celsius. So those have a lot of caffeine. Not enough. Because you get used to it like this, It starts off, again, once a day, it's fine. But then over time you need 2. And then over time you need 3. And I know it's like an epidemic. There's some high schoolers who have like 4.
Yeah, I know there's like,
and I'm like,
somewhat of a science of like the slow releasing and fast releasing like caffeine in terms of like the difference between like tea and coffee.
Yeah.
And like that's a whole debate too.
Uh-huh.
I don't know that I guess maybe coffee, I can kind of see how it would feel like sort of act quicker than like a tea or
Definitely.
something.
for sure.
I think both definitely do their jobs.
And then Celsius on like
So-
another like level. Right?
Oh, for
Tea,
sure.
coffee, energy drink, Red Bull.
Yeah.
I actually had a really, really bad experience with caffeine during my first quarter at UCSD. So the day before finals, I had a final Saturday 8 a.m. to 11 and 12 to 3:30.
Oh.
So the day I left all my studying for both subjects till the day before.
Oh.
So
yeah. I guess we all
that
can
day-
relate.
So on that day, I pulled an all-nighter.
Yeah.
You know the Starbucks like iced vanilla lattes they sell in the markets?
Mhm.
I had 3 of those
Oh my gosh.
to keep me up all night.
How much caffeine they have?
250 milligrams.
251.
So it's 750.
Yeah.
So it's like
Yeah.
oh my gosh, it's
What's
more
the
than
limit?
I guess the like healthy threshold is like 400 milligrams, but again it just depends. I mean, but also it depends on your weight, your age, I guess, and like how much you're resistant to caffeine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so for you, it may be like even lower or
Yeah.
maybe higher. I don't know, but 750 is not healthy
Yeah,
at
so-
all.
Right, but it was an
So
all-nighter.
all-nighter, I had 3 caffeines. Guess what happened to me during my midterms?
Oh, that you
were,
like the best line dropped.
Yeah,
So like you were super tired.
I fell asleep during
Oh,
both
you
of
fell.
them.
Yeah, you fell asleep.
No.
Yeah, I
exactly.
took a whole like 1 hour nap at the start of both finals.
What?
Oh my God.
So
Yeah.
it's like
Yeah.
a caffeine withdrawal. Is that the case? Because like
Uh-huh.
your
Although I
body
feel like
withdraws.
withdrawal is more like
Yeah, if you're
you've
not
become
taking
accustomed
it.
to like a
Yeah.
certain level, and then you're like actively trying not to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or,
Oh,
like,
so
trying
it
not to.
dropped. Like,
Oh, so
How is
how do you
that?
call it? Like
Like a caffeine crash.
crash,
Yeah,
crash.
crash.
Exactly, crash.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
Extreme crash.
Extreme crash, and you
Yeah.
couldn't like resist.
No, like,
Falling like
I
asleep.
didn't even try to fall asleep. Like,
It was just like
it just happened.
no one woke you up? No one was like, hey,
No.
Millen.
I was like asleep on my desk,
Oh,
and like the TAs were
what?
just walking up and down, not doing.
Did they just watched you?
Yeah, like what if I was passed out? Like,
That's
how is
I
it
know.
possible?
Oh my god,
Yeah.
that's crazy. Hey
I
guys, don't do that.
Don't do that. Don't do
Yeah,
start studying a week before. Don't take
Yeah.
caffeine. Get your rest.
okay.
Yeah.
So maybe Millen has like a specific notes and for all-nighters. Just to wrap up this episode. Do you?
Don't do all nighters.
or do Celsius instead of Starbucks.
Oh my
Yeah.
gosh, that was
Take,
Yeah.
or at least like I feel like the Starbucks ones have a lot of sugar. Celsius
Oh.
has 0 sugar, so sugar also you will have sugar crash. So that might also influence.
I think it's interesting to kind of, because like caffeine, right? Your typical ones are like, oh, coffee or energy drinks. That can come through food. It can come through different
Right.
things.
Oh,
And
yeah.
so a lot of times I think it's like, in your head, right? You're like, oh, I've only had 1 coffee, so I'll be fine. But then you don't take into account, like, what is it that you've eaten and, like, those
yeah.
other factors that can kind of go into it. And so I think that's kind of, and even if we tie that back to sleep, right, that's a struggle. Because it's like,
Yeah.
oh, you try and plan and or like make sure that you don't have too much caffeine, right? And it's like, well, I should go to sleep just fine because like I've only had one source of caffeine, and then turns out you can't, or you can't control yourself from falling asleep.
Yeah.
So it's like this weird sort of working with your brain. I kind of like to think of it like that. Like, okay, sort of becoming aware of like yourself and like the levels that you can take, but also taking the active steps to kind of say, maybe this isn't the best idea, or like, you know what, I'm up late studying, maybe I should just go to bed. Like maybe that's the better idea.
Sure, and just to, wrap up this episode, we will definitely have more in the future because sleep is such a complex and comprehensive topic that it's not possible to cover everything in like 30-minute podcast episode, right? But we're just here, talking and bringing awareness to sleep schedule and to sleep awareness, I guess, if that's the case. And just, I guess, start making 1% improvement each day. Start making natural improvements. So darkness before you fall asleep, then light exposure, just a tiny bit. You don't have to like even walk, have a like 20-minute walk before classes or stuff like that. Just go and look into the window, into the sky, into the everything that goes on outside your box, your living box, your apartment or your dorm, and just prioritize your sleep schedule before your social media, before your email checking, before anything else, obviously if it's not urgent. So yeah, that was Brain Hub Podcast, and we will see you soon.
Thank you guys.
Thank you.
Get some sleep.
Hey you, thank you so much for listening to Brain Hub Podcast series. And if you have any suggestions, ideas, or questions, we would love to consider your feedback in the comment section below.